Welcome to season 2 of the Jeremy Mullins podcast, where we take a deep dive into different educational topics to help you optimize your life. I am Jeremy. I'm your host. I'm here today with my partner in crime inside the Phorm app, Mr. Montae.
Good morning, sir.
And it is day 100.
Triple digits.
Not, is it day 100 of the year, or did you start after that?
No, I started February 4th. It was the first
Okay.
day of 75 hard, like right after coming back from the banquet.
All right. 100 days of running, specifically running at least a mile. Have you done more than a mile?
Yeah, because I'm training for half marathon now.
Okay. So that's what I thought. That was at least run a mile a day, but you can do more depending on what the training program calls for.
Correct. So like today's a 3 mile run.
So you changed your identity to a runner yet?
No, I don't know if I ever do it. But technically I run every day and
Yeah.
that's an action that I take. So technically I'm a runner, right?
Well, and the reason I bring that up is like I see a lot of people who train for events, and I truly think to have success inside of the wellness journey, there's a point that you have to change your identity to you are a fit, healthy person, right? And when you change your identity to that, doesn't it could be specifically for a runner, but if we don't change that identity, you could be training for a half marathon, as you mentioned, do the half marathon, and then you never run again because you just did the training to complete said event. But when you work on the identity and you make that change truly with the identity, that allows people to continue that journey beyond said event.
Correct.
And that's kind of, what we're going to talk about today. You and I are having, in all transparency. So this is a concept that I had just been thinking about, especially, getting more involved with the NICA mountain bike league, which is kind of neat because there's training that we have to do to reach certain levels. And of course, my personality, I want to be the level 3 coach as soon as I can. But it takes some time. So level 1 this year, and I'm working on actually the level 3 testing now. So just gonna get my first aid to be level 2. But there was a neat little concept that they were bringing up in research and how we should start to think about sport. Okay. And for those that's listening, like, well, what's mountain bike have to do with, my weight loss journey or wellness journey? Mountain biking is a sport, but it's also a hobby, right? And I think that's more like something that people can paint a picture around and see, right? Because yes, but there are pros out there that get paid to ride mountain bikes. It's an Olympic sport, right? So there's the top echelon when it comes to mountain biking. But I think for most people, when you think of mountain biking, you think of it as a hobby. Would you agree?
Yeah.
But I was asking you earlier some questions and you kind of answered them right how most people would, and one of those questions was what does the average person, when we think of sport inside the United States, what do you think the top, 1 or 2 sports are?
I would say football, basketball, baseball.
Yeah, we could put football, basketball, baseball, soccer, you could throw those things out there, right? And whatever sport you pick, then the next question comes and I ask, okay, and we'll kind of pause here for the listener to kind of answer this to themselves. Who plays those sports? And we're not looking for like a specific person here, just in general, who plays baseball, who plays football, all that. And then kind of your mind probably going to professional athletes. Or if you're a college fan, you think student athlete, which now, I mean, with all this NIL, or I mean, are they professionals?
Pretty much.
I mean, they're getting paid. I don't know. Like, but you get my point. Like, most of the time, people are thinking, okay, sport is for specific people who do it at a high level, and it's what they do for a living, or it is their thing as far as in quote unquote college. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Is that kind of how maybe you think about it? If I just said sport, if we didn't have a conversation earlier offline, I just said, hey, what do you think about sports? Is that kind of how you think about it and how you grew up thinking about it
That is, I mean, that's how I was as an athlete.
as a has been athlete?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
was.
has been. So as
As
a collegiate athlete, right? Yeah. And for most people, okay, you were blessed and had the opportunity to go play college sports, but for most people, sports end high school, junior high. And I
correct.
feel like that is what our culture and what we've been looking at, and I want to shift that thinking. I want to shift the thinking that yes, sports are important in our early years, right? I mean, we'll pull up some research and talk about it in a minute. Why we think it's important that kids play sports and they participate inside of team sports specifically. But also, I want people to kind of shift this for the wellness journey and think that you should always play sport slash have a hobby. I think that's the big thing I want to put is, we're just going to redefine what sport is and look at it as adults, as individuals who are chasing this wellness journey, or going back to what we talked about earlier with identity. You identify yourself as a fit, healthy person, then sports should be part of that because of the benefits that come out of quote playing that sport, right? And once again, it's just, I know when I'm saying these words of playing in a sport, a lot of people think, well, I don't play this or I don't play that. But we got to think about, okay, how we can incorporate that into our life as a hobby. Your thoughts on that?
No, I agree. And like we did talk about offline, is like because when the people get to that level and they just stop, and we have that thought that, like you said, I was an athlete. I played, or still am. I played, but even me, like after stopping, when I was done playing basketball, I kind of just stopped with everything that came along with it, the exercise and everything, and there wasn't like the hobby to come along with it to keep that lifestyle going, after the sport ended.
Right. And I think, like, once again, and I even probably have had this earlier in my career. And once again, this is just something like I see this education that was done for mountain biking is it made so much more sense to me, right? So looking at mountain biking, it's a little kind of easier to scope that in the sense that, hey, if you get into mountain biking early and you make it your sport, it is a sport that you could continue for the rest of your life, right? Now, it doesn't mean that you'd be racing inside that sport, but you could still go out and do it, right? You could still look at performance based in that, those types of things. But if you break it back down, all fitness does have a sport to it to a certain degree, right? So you could say bodybuilding has a sport, CrossFit has a sport, right? Cardiovascular has many sports. Okay, so swimming, there's a sport, right? Like anything that we do activity wise, then yes, at a high level of that is a sport that goes along with it. So I think, taking this and kind of reframing and how we should teach our kids is, hey, there's benefits that come out of playing sports and being active. And you want to be able to do this the rest of your life because the benefits are going to pay dividends later on. So we never, okay, and this is the take home message for everyone. We really want to never stop playing a sport. Now, what that sport would be for each person can be totally different, right? Yes, you could sit and say, I'm in the phase of I like mountain biking right now. Mountain biking is a sport that I like to do. Okay. Now, I still work out in different ways that aren't related to that sport, aka CrossFit style workouts. And I just choose not to compete in the sport of CrossFit, but I do those styles of workout for my strength and conditioning. Okay. Now, we could argue for you don't compete in the sport of bodybuilding, but you choose to do bodybuilding as a style of training.
Correct. Not to say I might not do it one day, You never know.
Right. Well, and I'm saying just because you're not competing in that said sport or choosing to do a bodybuilding competition doesn't mean you won't ever do it. I'm not saying that, right? And that's the cool thing about fitness in general. In a lot of the ways, if we just change our terminology, just you could go sign up for it. Same thing, like you don't think about it, but if you run a half marathon, theoretically you're competing in the sport of running.
Right.
How's that make you feel?
Like a runner.
Right? So, it's reframing how we look at it. And is one thing that if you are early on in your wellness journey and you're losing weight and you're getting healthy, it is something that we encourage, right? Because in the beginning, a lot of people do focus on the scale, right? They focus on weigh ins, week in and week out. But you've seen this multiple times, right? I've seen it multiple times, or we could say hundreds of times at this point. There is going to be a day that client hops on the scale and that journey of the scale going down is over. This person can still be getting fit. This person can still be getting in great shape, dropping body fat, et cetera, et cetera. But the scale could stay the same or go up.
Correct.
And that's where we usually encourage people, hey, you need to find an event to train for, you need to find a hobby. And all we're doing is kind of reframing this to where we should be like, we as humans should have a sport that we participate in. Okay. And once again, that sport can vary person to person, but there are so many benefits of getting out there and playing sport that it can't, in my opinion, like it would benefit a whole lot of things inside of this wellness journey for long term success.
Agree.
Now, a couple of things I've got I want to read. I know you found a few things just talking about, why is participation in youth sports so important, right? And then, the youth sport and experience can have impact, okay, on lifelong effects of a personality and psychology development of children. For most children, sports participation peaks near the age of 12. We know this from research and development in psychology that at this age and the time leading up to it are crucial periods for children to have and important consequences for self-esteem and social development, right? So, we kind of back it out and pull some stuff out of that. If participation is peaking at 12, for a lot of people, they may not participate in sport and exercise after that because we never developed the thought process that we should do sport for our fitness and our wellness long term. A lot of people get kids into sports because maybe they wanted to play a sport and they push their kid to do it, right? A lot of people get into sports because they are living through their child, whatever the case may be. Okay. But we should have our kids participate in sport because it's going to be something they need as a lifelong skill to live a healthy lifestyle. As adults, we should get into sport because it becomes our hobby that helps us live a longer, healthy lifestyle.
And also for the parents, you know this, so we can keep up with the kids who are out there playing sports.
100%, right? Try to stay as for me, try to stay as strong as I can, forever.
Off topic, I saw something the other day. This guy races his son every on his son's birthday every year, and his goal is to never lose the race to his son. That's gonna be me.
Yeah. A couple of things that I got on this is, sports participation is found to represent about 70% of out of school activities for youth. So I think that's a good thing. So if you look at what most of our activities in school is sports, which is a good thing. But those are some reasons I think people stop playing sport, right? Could be because of lack of time, and as far as time commitments. And that's where, I just think, we got to rethink what sport we're choosing. Okay. And, I'm sitting here and thinking, okay, well, if your kid's getting into, let's just say guitar or theater, and that's something that they have a passion for and they want to do, and that interferes, with their time commitment between time for study, time to do theater, they don't really have time for sport. Well, maybe they don't have time for the traditional sports that we talk about that we see a lot of time, soccer, baseball, that type of stuff. But what other sport could we get them into? Right? Cross country. Doesn't mean that they have to run cross country team, but they could run a few days a week and do a 5K. But the development of what would be normal that each person should participate in a sport slash hobby, that is kind of the reframing that I'm going to start working into my education to the clients that I work with and push to people. And I think we can have great benefits out of that if every person has that hobby slash sport that they're training for on a daily basis. And what was some of the? I know you looked up a couple of things just on kids and sports. What were some of the things you found benefit wise?
Well, the main thing I saw was the emotional development, and it says sports can help children learn to handle pressure, manage stress, and cope with both wins and losses, fostering resilience and self-esteem. So just, setting up the kids for success later on in life, because you look at it now, like what are some of the things that a lot of adults or we struggle with in life, handling wins and losses inside of our life, managing stress,
Yeah.
pressure from, high pressure situations from work, from everyday life things. So just setting them up for success to be able to handle these things later on in life is, I believe that's very beneficial because it's not, yes, it's the kids now, but it's the things that we see every day with, people that we coach that they're going through that's keeping them off track from their goals.
And I think, as I read through this next, set of notes I prepared for this, I want you guys to listen to the parallel of why kids quit sport and maybe why some of you have quit your wellness journey before, right? And for you, my take is I haven't went over this with you. I want you to think about the individuals that you coach. And I guarantee as we walk through this, you're going to see some parallel that comes in it, right? Just like the number one reason most people quit, or I'm sorry, most kids quit sport is because they lost the enjoyment of it. Okay. So if we think about the people who drop out of, 8-week challenge or they stop their wellness, I think it's because they're no longer having fun because the things that maybe they were excited about in the beginning, learning new things, the scale moving right off the bat, all those things maybe slow down or stop. So therefore, it's not fun, and they end up stopping, end up quitting, right? So that's the thing we look at, the parallel of some of these things that's going to come out of that. So, what's your thoughts when it comes to people having fun? And can you see that why kids would stop playing? But also, have you seen it in the people you coach as far as when the fun wears off or the new wears off?
Yeah, and it's that thing that, well, I mean, we all talk about, it's the motivation. In the beginning, it's fun, it's exciting, it's new, it's something different, right? We have this big goal that we're chasing in mind, and we're like, we're gonna get after it. So it's fun in the beginning, but then
Yeah,
you get a couple weeks into it, and the fun, the motivation kind of dies down, and now we're like, we're deep down in it. Like it's hard, it's monotonous. We've had, the weekends that we've made the sacrifices of going out, having the drinks with friends, whatever it may be. And like we start to think about the things that we're missing out on rather than what we're gaining. So it's not fun anymore. And it's just like, well, I want to go back and I want to have fun. And this
100%.
same thing with kids, like going out to play a new sport. We're signing up for football. Yeah, it's cool. We're gonna play football. Like you look at the NFL, the college athletes, we're gonna go do all this stuff, and you get into it, and it's fun at first, but then, some of those things come where you're running sprints because somebody fumbled the football, or you have the drills that you have to do that are hard. And it's like, okay, well, this part isn't fun anymore. Like, I don't want to do this. Like I'll never forget when I was younger and played Little League football, it was the same thing. I was excited. I was going to play football, and then, there was some discipline. There were some things going on where it's just like, hey, you got to get out here. You got to run sprints. You got to run these hitting drills, like these things are hard. It's like this isn't fun. And I wasn't having fun with it, and I wanted to quit. I didn't, but I wanted to.
Well, and sometimes there's what I like to call the secondary fun that comes out of doing stuff hard, right? Like there's times that, workouts or, half marathons, these endurance workouts that, we do, it's not fun in the moment, but it's fun afterwards, right? Because the success, the, sense of accomplishment. Okay. So as we say this, like, yes, there's going to be hard times, just like in life, there's going to be struggles and there's going to be hard times that come along with it. Okay.
Some of the
Um,
some of the best feelings I've ever had is after doing something hard that maybe I didn't think I could do, but I went and did it anyway. It's like that feels, I mean, the feeling is amazing.
Another reason kids quit sport, and once again, paralleling this to why people stop their wellness journey, burnout. So literally they're burnout, overtrained, lack of recovery time, excessive pressure, can lead to burnout. We kind of see that when people put pressure on themselves and have these expectations that just don't align with what reality is. 5 pounds of loss per week, or whatever the case may be. So and that's where like I get it for especially for kids, getting burnt out on maybe, a sport because of other focuses, right? You got once again, you got things that come into play like, oh, I'm taking harder classes in school, I need to focus there. And that's where, the broad concept of sport, I want people to widen what they're thinking, right? Because yeah, you may not have time to participate in that team sport because it does take up time and it has games 2 or 3 days a week, whatever the case may be. But it doesn't mean that we can't shift this child or this, the children to choosing a sport that they can do for a lifetime. That could be an individual sport, right? Because that's still going to teach them, as we're talking about effort and results and how to deal with, consequences or adversities that come along with it on top of the long term thought process that if we as humans realize that playing sport, aka the hobby, is going to have these benefits for us long term and help us have this long term success that all of us are striving for, right? Going back to it, like we're training for the 65-year-old version of ourselves so that we can enjoy retirement. Okay. And pause right there and think about people that are in your life that you've known, they're 65 to 75 years old. Do they have the physical capacity to live an optimal, healthy life. And you're fooling yourself to think that you're not going to work out and you're not going to take care of yourself and you're going to be 65, 75 and in a different boat than them. That's the reality. So, really reframing how we think about sport, I think can have so many benefits, not only as us as parents with small children, but also us as adults leading into our later years, as we really like, okay, this is my hobby and it could change, right? Or this is my sport. It can change. That's totally fine, right? Totally fine to have a different sport every year. That's the beautiful thing about it as you get older, right? You're not a professional athlete. You're not getting paid to play the sport. So you can change sports every year. It's okay.
When is peanut butter eating gonna be a sport?
I mean, listen, isn't hot dog eating a sport or is that just a competition?
I mean, competition is can be sport, right?
Well, let's ask Google. Is hot dog eating a sport? Is hot dog eating a sport?
If it is, then peanut butter eating is definitely a sport. So
AI says yes, hot dog eating contests, particularly the famous Nathan's famous contest, are widely considered a sport. This is because they involve competitive elements, established rules, and professional structure with athletes, training, and sponsorship. There you go.
Team Alpha Weekend peanut butter eating contest.
Peanut butter eating contest, going to be a professional, right? And that's actually kind of cool. I mean, listen, like we were talking about this earlier, AI is coming, but that's a cool little write up, right? In the sense of like widely considered a sport because it involves competitive elements, right? Established rules, professional structures with athletes, training, and sponsorship. But if you take out all the last of that, the rules, professional structure, all that, because it involves competitive elements. Therefore, anything that you do can be competitive with yourself, right? I want to lift X amount. I want to run X distance in this time because I know those things are going to pay dividends for my health. Then at a certain point, it may be I want to maintain that strength, maintain being able to run X amount of distance in X amount of time as I age. All that is, quote, competition, even though it's with self. So I challenge you as a listener to pick a hobby slash sport that you are going to participate in. So many benefits from having fun, developing relationships, you name it, but also in the grand scheme of things, you are providing yourself with a baseline and a part of life that's going to help you live that longer, healthy life.
Love it.
So, what's your next sport? Let's wrap up with that. Because running right now is your sport. You got your train. You said you were training for half Ironman, or sorry, half marathon, right?
Yeah,
You
Sal
said,
challenge. Sal put it out there, so we're all the whole company's gonna do it. Uh, Next sport, man. I want to get into bike riding. I know you talk about like mountain bike riding, but one of the things is I want to do a Ironman or a half Ironman, the 70.3. So I've never like actually ridden a road bike. So getting into riding a bike would be like learning how to do it. Would be pretty good goal to have in order to, move forward towards that.
yes, I'm biased, but I love bike riding because it fits all these things that we always talk about. Like it's fun, right? Like riding a bike is fun. You can make it as challenging as you want to. There's so many different trail systems and different types of trails. You can ride road bike, you can ride mountain bike. Like, it's a great workout. You can make it as hard as you want to. Like, there's so many benefits that go into it. You meet great people who do it, right? So all those benefits that we talk about sport, then you can do on a bike, right? And that's kind of and it doesn't have to be a bike. I want to make sure that I say that one more time, right? I just would encourage, especially as adults, like you're trying, well, I don't know what hobby to do. It's a good one, right? It's an easy one to get into. There's generally communities everywhere. There's generally bike trails everywhere, that you can get into. So that barrier of entry is low, minus purchasing the bike, right?
I need a
Uh,
big bike.
you would need a big bike. You need a little, you'd probably even need a little longer bike than what Katie has.
Yeah, I might have to get like a custom bike.
I've seen some stuff online. Speaking of that, Reggie Miller, I think's got into riding bikes. And speaking of quote unquote sport, but that is Wayne should use that as a great example. Here's a pro athlete who just chose another sport upon retirement, and he's living a healthy lifestyle. Whereas a lot of people who retire from sport, who never pick up that hobby or that next sport, unfortunately don't live a healthy lifestyle. So we ended on that because we didn't even plan that one, and it fit perfectly.
Yeah.
Awesome. Appreciate your guys' time today. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Once again, kind of a new concept that we've just been thinking about. I think it was a great conversation. And of course, the challenge, the take home message, go out, find a sport slash hobby that you are training for, right? Be in competition with others, be in competition with yourself. Doesn't matter as long as that sport is in your life. Hope you guys have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.